called a kind of reflective practice exercise to think about how can we consider what is meaningful in participation. It was a phrase, meaningful, I heard at 3 different tables as I passed their discussions. And to give us some material to think about in exploring that question, I'm going to invite Rivka Komasum, who is the CAMS Participation Manager from East Sussex. Rivka, are you going to be with Mike or without?
Oh, I might do without Mike. Can you hear? Oh, not really. Okay.
But you might have me singing if I use the mic.
It's an ego thing that goes on with these two. Yes.
So that's just me trying to dissipate some nerves. Oh no, don't hand all of them out. I need one. So Warren has kindly put a ladder at the back of the room. And I just wanted to... Oh, how do I use this now? Okay, so there are loads of models of participation out there. Lots of them have been criticised, including this one. They've all got something really useful in them. And because this is the sort of first that really got people noticing participation, this is what we're using. I think the important things to notice about the ladder are the first 3 rungs on the ladder are not participation, but lots of people do it. We do it in services a lot, but they're not participation, so I'll say something about that in a minute. And then the other rungs on the ladder are. Another really important thing is not all decision. I think the fact that it's a ladder makes everybody think we have to be at the top of the ladder, and then people get really concerned. So at the top of the ladder we're saying young people come up with ideas and adults are all in the background, maybe just doing some odd bits of facilitation just to support. Well, I was trying to think of an example. If I had a problem with my leg that might need it being amputated, I do not want to be the only person making that decision, and I certainly don't want to be the person doing the operation. So not all decisions are to be led by only one person. So participation is about sharing in decisions, but I think for services it's really important that it's about knowing what decisions are on the table. And participation is complicated because in any one process there are a number of decisions to be taken. So let's look at the ones that are very quickly that are not participation. So manipulation might be that your local primary school is about to be closed and you get your 4-year-olds to hold placards saying "Save our school." They've got no idea what it says on the placard, they don't know what the issue is, and they're just there being manipulated to add power to your cause. And decoration is a similar idea. Maybe we could have had a group of young people singing or doing a play here this morning and it wouldn't have meant anything to them. What's that about? Why are they here? What are they adding? What's the purpose? Tokenism, I think we do this a lot. Board meetings where young people are asked to speak at board meetings, and again they're not sharing in any decisions. They can't influence when the board meeting takes place, who's at the board meeting. They don't hear the discussions after their talk. They've just been flown in to add a little something. Then the next rungs are all participation. Assigned but informed. Well, if we'd maybe involved young people today and told them about this event, what it was all about, and they'd helped out by maybe showing you to your tables, offering you drinks. They were here, they knew what it was about, but they're not involved in sharing the decision making. They're not changing the shape of this morning's event. Then we'd have told them what it was about, they'd be clear, but they wouldn't be involved in any shared decision-making with us about what we're doing. We do quite a lot of consulting in services, where we've decided as a service that we want to change something about our service, so we decide we're going to ask young people about the changes that we've decided we're going to make. you'll notice that it always says informed, because in order to participate, you've got to know what you're participating in. And this is when participation is complicated, because to do that well, you've probably had to do quite a high-level bit of participation, where you're sharing in decision-making to create useful information that young people can understand, that speaks to them, that's engaging, and not the usual stuff that we all produce, which is loads and loads of words, which might be saying exactly the same stuff, but it's not accessible. So to consult well, young people have to understand the service that they're being asked about and why they're being asked. They ought to be told the result of the consultation and how their views are being used for it to be participation. Rung 6, we've got an adult-initiated change, a request for information, but young people are sharing with those adults. So with more time and capacity, the young people from London might have created the whole of this session with Warren and decided on the order of the discussions and what the content of the discussions should be and what the content of the exercises should be. Now, that's no criticism, because there wasn't time. So this is the thing about why are we working at certain points on the ladder. As long as we understand and we're clear about why. Is it because we're being lazy? Then that's not so good. But if it's because it's right that we're at this certain level, or in this case there wasn't the time, let's do the best we can in the time we have, and we're clear about it and why we're doing it. Rung 7, young people have asked us to get together to talk about participation, and inviting adults, key adults, to be in the room with them to help us think about how to get that right. And Rung 8, actually, is this a decision, could we have done this day with just young people planning it? Probably we could. This is a decision about participation. Probably young people who are experts in participation could have created the day themselves. But as I said before, it's not always like that. I wouldn't want to be the person making the decision on my own about my leg. So, we were discussing on our table interviews, so I wanted to just ask you to think about a process and where you might say it goes on the ladder. No right and wrong answers really, but and you've got an example Warren's going to hand out, but this is sort of a typical way that interviews happen at the service that I'm at. So an interview is scheduled for prospective psychologists in CAMS this year, and the participation worker was asked to identify some young people for a panel. She was given the date, it's me, I was given the date and time of the interviews, and it was during a weekday. 3 young people met with myself prior to the interview and were given a verbal summary of the role that they were interviewing for and those responsibilities. The group of young people and myself thought together about the kinds of skills they would wish a person in that role to have. In order to help with this, young people were encouraged to think about their own experience of one-to-one sessions in terms of what they'd found helpful and what they hadn't. Having created that list of skills and characteristics, young people were supported to think of questions, scenarios and activities that could help them understand whether the candidate in front of them did or did not meet their criteria. We also looked at what makes an equal opportunities interview, confidentiality, who's responsible for the final appointing of the candidate, how much shared decision making would there be in that, and how to ask for help during the interview process. On the day, young people did conduct their interview in a separate room to the worker panel. They scored their questions and they came up with a summary of each candidate and thought about whether they felt those candidates would, whether they'd been unhappy to work with any of them. They then joined the worker panel and fed back their views and scores for each candidate, and they heard the scores and the views of the worker panel. The 2 groups discussed their viewpoints, and then the worker panel made the decision on who was to be appointed. More than one candidate was offered a post. The young people broadly concurred with the worker panel, but one person was appointed that they felt less convinced by. the worker panel agreed to share their concerns with the candidate. So I'd just like you to take a moment to think about that process and where would you put it on the ladder?